What's going on, Imperials? It's Emperor Cubone here. So the 5th generation has a lot of Pokémon, like maybe too much, and since it is the halfway point of the series so far, it does kind of seem like the cutoff for not getting a lot of attention, although it has been touched up over time. A Mega here, or a Gigantamax form there, and even new forms and evolutions have been added, but I think we can start to consider extensive ability changes, or perhaps move additions as adequate attention, like with Heatmor getting Fire Lash years later. Certainly adding the Fairy type would count, so it's not as wide open as you might think, but we do still need to expand it a bit in a way that we haven't for a while, so here are the top 12 untouched Pokémon from the Unova region. Number 12, Seismitoad. Okay, so first of all, clearly Water and Ground is one of the best typings ever made, so that'll help out any Pokémon, but Seismitoad's stress on HP makes good use of it. And as weird as the whole line might look, the sound emphasis lets them learn many Sonic-based moves for coverage, as well as even plenty of poison or ice moves on top of that to handle the one grass weakness. Seismitoad may not be the most impressive Gen 5 water type, but it's always a reliable Pokémon to have around. And I'm sure that for whatever Pokémon I neglect to put on the list, you can substitute them in right here. Even though poor Seismitoad does always get overshadowed by the next water frogs that they made immediately after this. Number 11, Stoutland. I never used to like Stoutland very much because it just seemed like a boring, normal-type dog, but it's more helpful than you might think. Lillipup evolves at level 16 just like a starter, so it becomes usable much earlier than other first route Pokémon, and when fully evolving, Stoutland has a massive and diverse move pool that would let it fit into a number of different roles that you might need to fill out your team. Seriously, in just about any configuration, you can leave Stoutland in the last slot to pick up any slack, and it will be able to contribute in some way. It can even handle most of the 8 gyms that you'll need, and is a ride Pokémon in Alola, so it may not be as flashy as some of the other dog Pokémon out there, but this well-trained canine definitely has a shot at best in show. Number 10 is Cavalier and Gore. These two bugs are inextricably tied together, and I think that they only benefit from it. Obviously, they are linked through their unique evolution method, but they are also so distinct from one another, with Gore being lightning fast and Cavalier being slow but defensive. Also, it is impressive that Gore can be so good as a pure bug type. This is like the first good one that we've seen since Pinsir in Gen 1, although it having one of the highest speeds ever helps for sure. And of course, Cavalier is a good common bug and steel type that you can get before the end of the game, if you can manage to get the trade, that is, but its defenses are actually secondary to its attack stat, so it can spear through most anything with its powerful arsenal of moves. I personally do lean towards the Snail Knight, but I can see why other people might favor its ninja counterpart. You really just can't go wrong with either of these bugs. Number 9, Conkelder. There are a number of fighting types that have pretty much remained the same since Black and White, but I think Conkelder stands out as being more accessible. It was far earlier in the game than most of the other fighting types, and yes, while it did require a trade to evolve, that's not really a giant problem with the wireless global trading. You can even rig it to trade it back to yourself on the GTS if you want the exact same one. Unova gets a lot of flack for copying other generations, but when the Machamp clone has even higher physical attack, it's worth talking about as its own thing. Even though it is not a rock type, it still uses plenty of those attacks, probably due to the concrete pillars that it's holding. So if you're looking for some kind of muscle for your team, the one with the barely contained bulging biceps might be a good place to start. Number 8, Zebstrika. Perhaps the most controversial placement on the list, because some people might say that it doesn't deserve to be here, but I disagree. Zebstrika only just now is showing up again in the Gen 9 DLC. It's not been allowed to be in any of the other regional dexes since Gen 5, but has still been a fan favorite, and for good reason. It's by far one of the best physical electric types found early in the game, since it actually learned useful electric attacks. Take note, Luxray, on top of natural coverage like Flame Charge that set it apart from other electric types found in the early games. It is super fast, hits decently hard until well into the later game, and it is guaranteed to have an immunity of some kind with one of its 3 abilities. Maybe the Thunder Zebra hasn't actually held up and we don't know because we haven't gotten to see it since Gen 5 until the upcoming DLC, but I'm excited to finally catch one in a modern game just so we can find out. Number 7. Ferrothorn. Grass is notoriously bad, and Steel is particularly good in many matchups, but luckily, Ferrothorn leans more towards the latter, making this one of the best grass types to sit and take hits, especially with the Iron Barb's ability that chips away the enemy health with every hit. Plus, its nature powers make it uniquely suited with healing options that other walls couldn't possibly have, making its ridiculous defenses even more tedious to fight, but oh so satisfying when you can sit there for days abusing common tactics like Gyro Ball because of your pitiful speed. My only real complaint is the jarring sprite discrepancies that occur in these metallic thorns, but Crest and Steel was one of the combinations that I was most anxious to see, and they did not disappoint, making one so perfect that they had to make the next one a legendary just to keep up. Number 6. Reuniclus. If there were a prize for Pokémon that I underestimate most in the Unova region, it would probably go to Reuniclus, because it flies way under my radar. I think probably because it was just another pure psychic type, but when even the base stage has nearly 100 in special attack, this thing stands out as a powerhouse on the special side, using its powerful mind to shred the opponent's psyche to bits. Also, its HP is decent, and with the possible Regenerator ability to heal, it means that the cellular blob can soak up hits to an almost frightening degree. I will admit to not actually having used one before, but that's because I purposefully didn't evolve it and use the lower stages, and it still contributed greatly to my team. So if you ask me, this is one of the easiest version exclusive choices I've ever seen, since I would gladly take the Master of Mitosis anytime over its counterpart. Number 5. Embor. I actually prefer Samurott out of the 3, but its Hisuian form means that Embor gets the spot here. It may have been the 3rd fire and fighting type in a row, but this Mega Fire Pig can still be a threat all its own. See, Superior really has a crutch in kind of needing Contrary to be useful, but Embor is not so limited, because it can have a much bigger move pool with fighting, poison, rock, ground, and electric coverage that Superior can't possibly access. Or at the very least, Embor can crash around into everything with its reckless ability, powering up its many recoil moves. It's also got surprisingly high special attack, meaning that it can even scald other fire types effectively, being the only fire starter to date with any water coverage even over the new Crocodile one somehow, which means that there must be something special about this overcooked pig. Number 4. Crocodile. So, full disclosure, I did hold the Pokken roster placement against Chandelure because as special treatment goes, that's not nothing, so instead I'm going to point out how great Crocodile can be. Sandile may take unusually long to evolve, but it's worth the wait for him to finally turn red, since he becomes the fastest ground type in the region. Plus the added dark typing makes it a potent combination that wasn't seen again until a legend in Scarlet and Violet, so arguably Crocodile is still your only real chance of seeing it and is possibly the best way to do so. I'm not sure that there's any one thing that makes Crocodile stand out, but its well above average attack along with its abilities for Intimidate or Moxie, and its double immunities based on its beneficial typing makes this killer croc as cool as they come, having shown up with surprising frequency after its introduction since they don't want people to miss out on this great opportunity. Number 3. Haxorus. As far as intimidating Pokemon go, Haxorus has got to be right at the top. It's a dinosaur with blades on its face, but it's not all just for show. Haxorus can back up that imposing facade with actual power. It's got a 147 attack stat, which is high even for dragons, especially since it's not actually the pseudo-legendary of the region. But you would be forgiven for thinking that it was, since it shows up way earlier than Dino and is more regularly seen in subsequent games. And even though this is actually the first ever fully evolved pure dragon type, you don't feel like it's missing anything. It effortlessly wields the gargantuan power inherent to these creatures of myth. And even when its lowest special attack stat is still just mediocre, you know to look out for the Axejaw Titans as serious threats. Plus, they all have X's in their name, and everyone knows that an X makes everything cooler. Number 2. Golurk. I may be biased as Golurk is my favorite overall Unova Pokémon, but you cannot deny how good this thing can be. This ancient automaton is a brilliant design, but whichever forgotten civilization built them should be proud, not only because their power sources still work today, but also because they can dominate even these modern Pokémon as well. Sure, the raw numbers aren't quite as impressive as, say, Haxorus, but firstly, Golurk's typing is pretty great, resulting in 3 immunities and amazing stab offenses, but Golurk goes well beyond this with its level up move pool having Steel, Rock, and plenty of fighting to boot. But this centuries-old Sentinel honestly behaves more like the normal type, learning so many coverage moves that you couldn't possibly use them all. And it makes great use of its massive fists with excessive punching capabilities backed up by the Iron Fist ability. And let us not forget that Golurk can fly! You can ride your very own Iron Giant as it rockets through the sky! Golurk is basically the closest Pokemon that you can get to a superhero, and it really shows through for how fun it is to use in any region that you might find it, even if it does take a little bit longer to evolve. Number 1. Excadrill. Out of all the Unova Pokemon, I think it's safe to say that this little metallic mole definitely made a name for itself. Excadrill uses relatively fast speed and great physical attacking prowess to become a lethal combination, and it was totally inverted from the slow, bulky previous Ground and Steel type. So if you've got to copy another type combo, you might as well do it differently, right? And the thing is that Drillbur can be found early, but it's also not just handed to you. You've got to find it in a dust patch in a cave, so if you put in the slight effort to track one down, you would have a solid team member that other people might overlook, leading to a speedy drill that can tear through many of the gyms in the region. Excadrill might not be as diversified as some of the other options here, but its specialty of strong ground or steel works well, especially when it can get boosted by the sand, and even with its defenses not really being anything special, the HP is surprisingly high on the subterrane Pokémon, so you might not faint as quickly as you would expect. I once again have to say, in this series, competitive is a fine way to gauge a Pokémon's worth if that's what you want, but when a Pokemon like Excadrill can be just as valuable or more so in a regular playthrough, it means that even despite spotty inclusion every other generation, Excadrill remains one of the best Unova Pokemon to receive little to no attention since its initial DS debut. But there are literally dozens of other Unova Pokemon that haven't been on the radar of people making decisions for updates. You might have been able to come up with an entirely separate list, and there are already even some that I'm kind of regretting leaving off of this one, but as far as solid in-game choices that still use the original tools they were given to near perfection, I think these options are some of the finest. Which Untouched Gen 5 Pokemon do you think are the best? Let me know down in the comments. Also be sure to leave a like, share this video, and subscribe so that you too can become an Imperial today. And until next time, stay grounded!